The text came in at 9:47 p.m. on a Friday night, just as I was settling into my recliner with a cold beer and the remote. Helping Mom with some stuff tonight. Back tomorrow morning. Don't wait up. Lisa. I stared at the screen of my phone, feeling something cold settle in my gut. Lisa never helped her mother with anything. Hell, she barely tolerated the woman most days, always complaining about how her mom was too old-fashioned, too judgmental, too everything that Lisa had supposedly evolved beyond. My name's Jake Morrison, and I've been married to Lisa for 12 years. I run Morrison's Auto Repair on the south side of town, getting my hands dirty, fixing other people's problems while Lisa works her office job downtown, managing accounts for some fancy consulting firm. We're not rich, but we do all right. Or at least, I thought we did. Something about that text felt wrong. The tone was too formal, too distant. Lisa usually texted like she talked, scattered, full of abbreviations and emoji. This read like a business memo. I called her mom, Margaret, without really thinking about it. Hi, Mrs. Patterson. It's Jake. Lisa said she was coming over to help you with something tonight. You need me to swing by with my truck or anything? The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Jake, honey, I haven't heard from Lisa in 3 weeks. What help? The beer in my hand suddenly tasted like cardboard. She texted me saying she was helping you with some stuff tonight. I'm sitting here watching Jeopardy and eating leftover casserole. Been alone all evening. Are you sure she said she was coming here? My throat felt tight. Yeah, I'm sure. Maybe I misunderstood. I'll call her. But I didn't call her. Instead, I did something I'd never done before in 12 years of marriage. I opened up our phone account online and checked Lisa's location. The little blue dot wasn't at her mother's house. It was downtown at the Hilton. I sat there staring at that dot for maybe 10 minutes, my mind racing through explanations. Maybe she was meeting a client there. Maybe she was planning some kind of surprise party. Maybe there was a perfectly innocent reason why my wife was lying to me about where she was spending the night. But deep down, in that place where you know things before your brain catches up, I already knew the truth. I called Margaret back. Mrs. Patterson, this is going to sound strange, but I need you to do me a favor. Can you call Lisa and tell her you need her to come over right now? Some kind of emergency? Jake, what's going on? I think your daughter is lying to both of us, and I want to find out why. Margaret Patterson might be 73 years old, but she's sharp as a tack and tougher than most people half her age. She'd raised 3 kids as a single mother after her husband died young, and she didn't suffer fools or liars gladly. If my Lisa is playing games, I want to know about it. I'll call her right now. 20 minutes later, I was sitting at Margaret's kitchen table, watching her flip pancakes on the griddle. She'd insisted on making them, saying that difficult conversations went better with food. The smell should have been comforting, but my stomach was churning too hard to appreciate it. She's on her way, Margaret said, not looking up from the stove. Sounded flustered when I told her I needed her here immediately. Kept asking what was wrong, but I just said she needed to come. I heard Lisa's car in the driveway at 11:23 p.m. Her key turned in the lock, and she called out as she walked in. Mom, what's the emergency? You sounded so... She stopped dead when she saw me sitting at the kitchen table. Her face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Surprise, confusion, guilt, anger, and finally a kind of defiant blankness. Jake, what are you doing here? I held up my phone, showing her text message. You said you were helping your mom tonight, so here I am, helping too. Lisa's eyes darted between me and her mother, who was still standing at the stove with her back to us, spatula in hand. I was on my way here when Mom called. From the Hilton? I asked quietly. The color drained from her face. Margaret finally turned around, and I saw where Lisa got her backbone from. The older woman's eyes were cold as winter steel. Lisa Marie Patterson Morrison, you use me as an excuse to lie to your husband? Mom, I can explain. Explain what? That you told Jake you were helping me while you were actually downtown at some hotel? What exactly were you helping with at the Hilton, sweetheart? Lisa sank into the chair across from me, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married. Vulnerable, scared, younger than her 32 years. But then her expression hardened. You tracked my phone? You actually tracked my phone like I'm some kind of criminal? Are you kidding me right now? I felt my voice rising. You lied to me about where you were spending the night, and you're mad at me for finding out? I needed some space, okay? Some time to think. At the Hilton? I got a room, yes. I needed to be alone. Margaret set a plate of pancakes in front of each of us with more force than necessary. Alone? Or with someone else? Mom, stay out of this. Like hell I will. You dragged me into this when you used me as your alibi. Who were you with, Lisa? The silence stretched out until it felt like a physical thing pressing down on all of us. Lisa stared at her untouched pancakes, and I stared at my wife, wondering how long this had been going on and how I'd been stupid enough not to see it. Finally, she looked up at me. His name is Brandon. He works at the firm. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, even though I'd been expecting them. Hearing it out loud made it real in a way that the phone tracking and the lies hadn't quite managed. How long? I asked. Jake? How long, Lisa? 3 months. Margaret made a disgusted sound and turned back to the stove. 3 months of lies. 3 months of using your family as cover for your affair. I raised you better than this. You don't understand, Lisa said, and now there were tears in her eyes. Jake and I, we've been growing apart for years. We never talk anymore, never do anything together. I was lonely. So you decided to fix that by lying and cheating? I kept my voice level, but inside I felt like I was falling apart. Instead of, I don't know, talking to me about it. When? When do we ever talk? You come home covered in grease, eat dinner in front of the TV, and fall asleep in that damn chair. When was I supposed to have this conversation? She wasn't entirely wrong, and that made it hurt worse. We had grown apart. We had fallen into routines that didn't include much actual communication, but that didn't justify what she'd done. So, you met someone at work and decided that was easier than working on our marriage? It wasn't like that. It just happened. Bullshit, Margaret said sharply. Affairs don't just happen. You made choices. You chose to lie. You chose to sneak around. You chose to use me as your cover story. Own your choices, Lisa. Lisa stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the linoleum floor. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Yeah, you do, I said, and something in my voice made her sit back down. You owe us that much. You owe me that much. She was crying now, but I found I didn't care as much as I should have. The woman sitting across from me felt like a stranger wearing my wife's face. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered, but it did, and now here we are. I pushed my untouched pancakes away and stood up. I'm going home. We'll talk more tomorrow when I've had time to process this. Jake, wait. I turned back to her. 12 years, Lisa. 12 years I thought we were building something together, and you threw it away for some guy from your office. It's not that simple. Yeah, it is. It really is that simple. I kissed Margaret on the cheek and headed for the door. Behind me, I could hear Lisa crying and her mother's voice cold and disappointed. I hope he was worth it, because you just lost the best man you're ever going to find. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and staring at the walls, trying to figure out how I'd missed the signs. Looking back, they seemed obvious now. The late nights at work that had become more frequent, the way she'd started dressing differently, paying more attention to her appearance, the phone calls she'd take in another room, the distance in bed, the way she'd turn away from me like I was a stranger. Brandon. I tried to picture him, but all I could come up with was some generic office guy in a suit. Probably drove a nice car, probably had soft hands that had never been under the hood of anything more complicated than a laptop. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa at 6 a.m. Can we talk? I'm sorry. I know I messed up. Too little, too late, I thought, but I texted back anyway. Come by the house at 10. We need to discuss what happens next. She showed up at 9:45, looking like she'd slept about as well as I had. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she was wearing the same clothes from the night before. Jake, Sit down, I said, pointing to the couch. We need to talk about practical things. Lawyers, division of assets. Who gets what? You want a divorce? She looked genuinely shocked, like she'd expected me to just forgive and forget. What did you think was going to happen? That I'd just pretend this never occurred? I thought maybe we could work through it. Go to counseling or something. I stared at her. You've been sleeping with another man for 3 months. You lied to me, you lied to your mother, and the only reason I found out is because I caught you. And you think counseling is going to fix this? People work through affairs all the time. Not people like me. I sat down across from her, keeping the coffee table between us. I can't trust you anymore, Lisa. Every time you're late from work, every time you take a phone call in another room, every time you say you're going somewhere, I'm going to wonder if you're lying. That's not a marriage. That's a prison sentence. She started crying again, but it felt manipulative now, like she was trying to make me feel guilty for being upset about her cheating. What about the house? We'll sell it and split the proceeds. Same with everything else. I don't want to sell the house. Then buy out my half. Get a loan, ask Brandon to help, I don't care. But I'm not staying married to you, and I'm not staying tied to you financially. She was quiet for a long time, picking at her fingernails like she used to do when we were dating, and she was nervous. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Sure. Are you going to try to make this difficult for me? The divorce, I mean. Are you going to try to hurt me? I thought about that question for a moment. The honest answer was that yes, part of me wanted to hurt her. Part of me wanted to make her pay for what she'd done, for the way she'd made me feel like a fool, but mostly I just wanted it to be over. I'm not going to make it any harder than it has to be, I said. But I'm not going to make it easy either. You made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences. She nodded and wiped her eyes. I'll find a lawyer. Good. Have them call mine. After she left, I called my sister Jenny to tell her what had happened. Jenny had never particularly liked Lisa, always saying she thought my wife was too concerned with appearances and not concerned enough with substance. She was surprisingly gentle when I told her about the affair. I'm sorry, Jake. I know you loved her. Yeah, well, turns out love isn't always enough. What are you going to do? Get divorced. Move on. What else can I do? You could fight dirty. Make her pay for what she did. I'm not that guy, Jen. Maybe you should be. She sure didn't worry about playing fair. After I hung up with Jenny, I drove to Murphy's Pub, the Irish bar where I'd been drinking since I turned 21. Reggie Murphy, the owner, was behind the bar polishing glasses. He took one look at my face and poured me a whiskey without being asked. Wife troubles? He asked. Soon-to-be ex-wife troubles. I told him the whole story over the next hour and 3 more whiskeys. Reggie listened without comment, occasionally nodding or making sympathetic noises. So, what's your play? He asked when I finished. No play. Just get divorced and move on. That's it? She screws you over and you just take it? What else am I supposed to do? Reggie leaned on the bar and looked at me seriously. Jake, you're a good guy. Maybe too good. This woman lied to you for months, cheated on you, used her own mother as an alibi, and now you're just going to quietly split everything 50-50 and wish her well? I'm not wishing her well. I just don't want to drag this out. There's a difference between dragging it out and letting her walk away without consequences. She's going to tell everyone that you two just grew apart, that it was mutual, that these things happen. Meanwhile, you're the one whose life got blown up while she was off playing house with some office Romeo. I finished my whiskey and signaled for another. So, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe it's time people knew the truth about what kind of person your wife really is. I'm suggesting that actions should have consequences. I'm suggesting that you stop being so damn noble and start being human. Meaning maybe Brandon's wife should know what her husband's been up to. Meaning maybe your wife's coworkers should know she's been mixing business with pleasure. Meaning maybe her mother should know exactly how her daughter used her as a cover story for an affair. Margaret already knows about that part. Does she know the details? Does she know it went on for 3 months? Does she know how many times Lisa lied and used her name to cover for hotel visits with her boyfriend? I thought about Margaret making pancakes while her daughter lied to both of us. The disappointment in her voice when she realized what Lisa had done. You're talking about revenge. I'm talking about truth. I'm talking about making sure that when the dust settles, people know who the victim was and who the villain was. Because right now, Lisa gets to control the narrative. She gets to decide how the story gets told. I stared into my whiskey, thinking about what he'd said. Part of me knew he was right. If I just quietly divorced Lisa and moved on, she would spin the story however she wanted. We grew apart. It was mutual. These things happen. Meanwhile, I'd be the guy whose wife left him, and people would wonder what I'd done wrong. I need to think about this. Don't think too long, Reggie said. The longer you wait, the more time she has to get her version of events out there. I left the bar around 3 p.m. and drove around town for a while, not really going anywhere, just thinking. I found myself parked outside the building where Lisa worked, a glass and steel tower downtown that housed several professional firms. I wondered which window was hers, wondered if Brandon was up there with her right now, wondered if they were laughing about how easily they'd fooled the dumb mechanic. That's when I made my decision. I'd never been the kind of guy who snooped through his wife's things or checked up on her, but circumstances had changed. If I was going to do this, I needed to do it right. I needed evidence, documentation, proof of what had been going on. I started with what I already had access to. Our phone records showed dozens of calls and texts between Lisa and a number I didn't recognize starting about 4 months ago. The frequency had increased dramatically over the past month. Late-night calls, early morning texts, conversations that lasted for hours. Next, I went through our credit card statements. 3 charges at the Hilton over the past 2 months. 2 charges at Romano's, an expensive Italian restaurant downtown that Lisa had never mentioned going to. A charge at Victoria's Secret for more than she'd ever spent on lingerie for me. I felt sick going through this stuff, like I was violating something sacred. But I reminded myself that Lisa had violated our marriage first. She'd made the choice to lie and cheat. I was just uncovering the truth. My next stop was social media. Lisa wasn't big on posting personal stuff, but she had a Facebook account and an Instagram. I went through her posts from the past few months, looking for clues. There weren't many, but I found a few photos from company events and office parties. In one of them, she was standing next to a tall guy with dark hair and a cocky smile, his hand resting on her lower back in a way that seemed too familiar. I zoomed in on the photo and studied his face. So this was Brandon. He looked exactly like I'd imagined. Handsome in a generic way. Well-dressed, the kind of guy who probably drove a BMW and talked about his golf game. I screenshot the photo and saved it to my phone. Then I did something I'd never done before. I created a fake Facebook profile. Just a basic account with a stock photo and a generic name. I used it to look up Brandon's profile, which wasn't hard to find once I had his face and knew where he worked. Brandon Kellerman, account executive at Morrison & Associates. Married to Jennifer Kellerman, 2 kids, lived in one of the expensive subdivisions on the north side of town. His profile was full of photos of his family, his car, a red BMW, just like I'd guessed, and various social events. The most recent photo was from 3 days ago. Brandon at some kind of work function, Lisa visible in the background. The timestamp showed it was posted at 11 p.m. on a Thursday night. The same Thursday night, Lisa had told me she was working late on a big project. I screenshotted that too. Over the next few days, I became a part-time private investigator, documenting everything I could find. I drove by the Hilton and confirmed that Lisa's car was in the parking garage on Friday night when she'd texted me about helping her mother. I made note of the license plate number and took photos. I also started paying attention to patterns. Lisa worked late every Tuesday and Thursday, or at least that's what she told me. She had a standing yoga class on Saturday mornings that seemed to run longer and longer each week. She'd started volunteering for weekend work events that she'd never mentioned before, but the real breakthrough came when I decided to follow her. I felt like a creep doing it, sitting in my truck outside her office building on a Tuesday evening, waiting to see where she went after work, but I needed to know for sure. At 6:30, Lisa came out of the building with Brandon. They walked to the parking garage together, talking and laughing like they didn't have a care in the world, like neither of them was married to someone else. They got into separate cars, but drove in the same direction. I followed at a distance, feeling like I was in some kind of bad movie. They ended up at a wine bar on the east side of town, a place I'd never heard of and definitely never been to. I parked across the street and watched them through the window. They sat close together at a small table, holding hands, looking for all the world like a couple on a date, which I guess is exactly what they were. I took photos through the window, feeling simultaneously vindicated and disgusted. This was my wife, the woman I'd promised to love and honor, holding hands with another man while I sat alone in my truck like some kind of stalker. They stayed at the wine bar for 2 hours. When they left, they walked to Brandon's BMW together. Lisa got in the passenger seat. I followed them to the Hilton. I sat in the parking lot for maybe 20 minutes after they went inside, staring at the building and trying to process what I'd just witnessed. This wasn't a one-time mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a full-blown relationship, complete with dinner dates and hotel rooms. When I got home, I poured myself a large whiskey and called Reggie. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Just like you said it would. Dinner, drinks, hotel room, the whole romantic package." "You get photos?" "Yeah, I got photos." "Good. Now what?" That was the question, wasn't it? I had the evidence. I had proof of what Lisa had been doing. The question was what to do with it. "I think it's time Brandon's wife knew what kind of man she married," I said. "Now you're talking. What about Lisa's job?" "What about it?" "Company policy usually frowns on employees having affairs with each other, especially when they're both married to other people. Creates liability issues, hostile work environment, all that legal stuff." I hadn't thought about that angle. "You think they'd fire her?" "I think they'd at least investigate, and I think it would be very uncomfortable for both of them to keep working together once everyone knew what was going on. I don't want to destroy her career." "Jake, she didn't worry about destroying your marriage. Why are you worried about her career?" He had a point. Lisa had made her choices without considering the consequences for me or our life together. Maybe it was time she faced some consequences of her own. I need to think about this some more. "Don't think too long. And Jake?" "Yeah?" "Stop feeling guilty about this. She's the one who chose to have an affair. She's the one who chose to lie and cheat. You're just making sure the truth comes out. There's nothing wrong with that. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen looking at the photos on my phone. Lisa and Brandon at the wine bar, holding hands across the table. Lisa getting into his car. The two of them walking into the hotel together. 12 years of marriage, and this is what it had come to. My wife sneaking around with another man while I sat at home like an idiot, trusting her, believing her lies. I thought about what Reggie had said about controlling the narrative. Right now, Lisa got to decide how this story was told. She got to paint herself as the victim of a loveless marriage who found comfort in the arms of another man. She got to make me the villain, the inattentive husband who drove his wife into another man's arms. But what if people knew the truth? What if they knew about the lies, the deception, the months of careful planning and sneaking around? What if Brandon's wife knew that her husband was spending his evenings in hotel rooms with a married coworker? What if Lisa's coworkers knew that she'd been having an affair with a colleague, using company events as cover for their relationship? What if everyone knew exactly what kind of person Lisa really was? I looked at the photos again, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I smiled. I started with Jennifer Kellerman, Brandon's wife. It took me 3 days to work up the courage to make the call, but finally I picked up the phone and dialed the number I'd found in the online directory. Hello? Her voice was pleasant, unsuspecting. Mrs. Kellerman? My name is Jake Morrison. I think we need to talk about our spouses. There was a long pause. I'm sorry. Who is this? My wife is Lisa Morrison. She works with your husband at Morrison & Associates. They've been having an affair for the past 3 months. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally she spoke, her voice much quieter now. Are you sure? I have photos, hotel receipts, phone records. I'm sure. Can you meet me somewhere? I need to see what you have. We met at a coffee shop on the north side of town, far from both our neighborhoods. Jennifer Kellerman was a pretty woman in her mid-30s, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing yoga pants and a sweater. She looked like the kind of suburban mom who drove a minivan and volunteered at her kids' school. She didn't look like a woman whose world was about to be destroyed. I showed her everything. The photos from the wine bar, the hotel receipts, the phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts between Lisa and Brandon. I watched her face as she processed the evidence, saw the exact moment when denial gave way to acceptance. How long have you known? She asked quietly. About a week. I caught Lisa in a lie about where she was spending the night, and it all unraveled from there. A week. She stared at the photos on my phone. I've been married to him for 8 years. 8 years, and I had no idea. I'm sorry. I know this is hard to hear. The late nights at work, the weekend conferences, the business trips that seemed to come up more and more frequently. She laughed bitterly. I actually felt sorry for him, working so hard. I thought he was doing it for us, for the family. What are you going to do? I don't know. Divorce him, obviously. But first, she looked at the photos again. First, I think I need to have a conversation with my husband. What kind of conversation? The kind where I tell him exactly what I think of him and his little office romance. The kind where I make sure he knows that his comfortable little life is over. I liked Jennifer Kellerman. She had steel in her spine, the kind of quiet strength that comes from being pushed too far. Can I ask you a favor? I said. Sure. When you confront him, can you do it somewhere public? Somewhere other people might overhear? She smiled for the first time since we'd sat down. You want maximum embarrassment. I want consequences. Real consequences. So do I. 2 days later, Jennifer Kellerman walked into her husband's office at 5 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, when the office was still full of people getting ready to leave for the weekend. I know because she called me afterward to tell me how it went. I walked right up to his desk, she said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. He looked so surprised to see me. Honey, what are you doing here? He says. So I pulled out the photos you showed me and spread them across his desk where everyone could see them. What did he do? Turned white as a sheet. Started stammering about how he could explain, so I said, Explain this. And I threw my wedding ring at him. Hit him right in the face. Jesus. Then I said, loud enough for the whole office to hear, I hope she was worth it, because you just lost your family. And by the way, her husband knows too, so I hope you both enjoyed your little hotel visits, because they're over now. How did he react? Like a coward. Started begging me to keep my voice down, worried about what people would think. A little late for that, don't you think? What about Lisa? Was she there? Oh, she was there. Sitting at her desk pretending to work, but I could see her listening to every word. When I was done with Brandon, I walked over to her desk. And? I told her that I had 2 children at home who were going to grow up without their father because she couldn't keep her legs closed. I told her that I hoped destroying my family was worth it because her own marriage was over too. How did she take it? She cried, big dramatic tears, said she was sorry, that she never meant for anyone to get hurt, so I told her that sorry doesn't unwreck a marriage and that she should have thought about that before she started screwing my husband. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and guilt. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? For there to be consequences, for the truth to come out. But hearing about Lisa crying at her desk made me feel sick to my stomach. What happened after that? Security escorted me out, but not before everyone in that office knew exactly what kind of people Brandon and Lisa are. I guarantee you it'll be all over the company by Monday morning. She was right. Lisa came home that night looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hands were shaking, and she looked like she hadn't eaten all day. "We need to talk," she said. I figured we might. We sat in the living room, the same place we'd had our conversation about divorce a week earlier. But everything felt different now. The secret was out, the lies were exposed, and there was no going back. "Jennifer Kellerman came to my office today," Lisa said. "I heard?" "You heard? How did you—" She stopped, realization dawning on her face. "You called her. You told her about Brandon and me." "I did." "How could you do that? How could you humiliate me like that?" I stared at her, amazed by her ability to make herself the victim even now. "I humiliated you. Lisa, you've been having an affair for 3 months. You've been lying to me, lying to your mother, sneaking around behind my back with a married man. And you're upset because his wife found out? That's different." "How is that different?" "Because what Brandon and I have is real. We love each other." The words hit me like a physical blow. It was one thing to know she was having an affair, another thing entirely to hear her say she loved him. "You love him." "Yes." "More than you love me?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I haven't loved you in years, Jake. Not really. We've just been going through the motions." "So why didn't you just leave? Why the lies and the cheating? Why not just ask for a divorce?" "Because I wasn't sure. I needed to know if what Brandon and I had was real before I blew up my life." "So you used me as a safety net. In case things didn't work out with Brandon, you'd still have me to fall back on." "It wasn't like that." "That's exactly what it was like. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. You wanted the security of being married to me and the excitement of sleeping with him." She started crying again, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no desire to comfort her, nothing. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now everyone knows the truth. Your coworkers, his wife, your mother. Now there are consequences. The whole office is talking about us. My boss wants to see me first thing Monday morning. Brandon thinks they are going to fire us both. Maybe they will. Maybe there are consequences for having affairs with married coworkers. You're enjoying this, aren't you? You're enjoying watching my life fall apart." I thought about that question. Was I enjoying it? Part of me was, the part that felt betrayed and humiliated and angry. But mostly I just felt empty. "I'm not enjoying anything about this situation, Lisa, but I'm not sorry it's happening either. You made choices. This is what consequences look like." "So what's next? Are you going to post it on Facebook? Take out an ad in the newspaper? How much more do you want to hurt me?" "I don't want to hurt you. I just want people to know the truth about what happened to our marriage. I want them to know that I wasn't the problem." She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. "I'll move out this weekend," she said finally. "Where will you go?" "Brandon's getting an apartment. His wife kicked him out." "So, you're moving in with him?" "We love each other, Jake. I know you don't understand that, but we do." "I hope it works out for you. I really do. Because you both gave up a lot for it." After she left, I sat in the quiet house and tried to figure out how I felt. Relieved, mostly. The lying was over, the pretending was over, the marriage was over. But there was something else, too, something darker. I wasn't done yet. Lisa moved out that Sunday, taking only her clothes and personal items. She left everything else, the furniture we'd bought together, the wedding photos, the life we'd built over 12 years. Brandon helped her load her car, and I watched from the window as they drove away together. I should have felt closure, but I didn't. If anything, I felt more angry than before. Lisa got to ride off into the sunset with her lover while I was left to pick up the pieces of our destroyed marriage. She got to start fresh while I got to explain to everyone why my wife had left me. That's when I realized Reggie had been right about controlling the narrative. Even now, even with the truth out, Lisa was managing to spin this as a love story. She and Brandon were star-crossed lovers who'd found each other despite being trapped in loveless marriages. They were brave enough to follow their hearts, even when it meant hurting other people. Meanwhile, I was the bitter ex-husband who'd vindictively destroyed their careers and broken up Brandon's family. I was the villain in their love story. That Tuesday, I drove to Lisa's office building. I didn't go inside. I just sat in the parking lot and watched. At 5:30, Lisa and Brandon came out together. They weren't trying to hide their relationship anymore. They walked hand in hand to Brandon's BMW, and I watched them drive away like they didn't have a care in the world. They went to the same wine bar where I'd photographed them before. Same table, same intimate conversation, same obvious affection. The only difference was that now they didn't have to sneak around. Their secret was out, so they could be open about their relationship. I sat in my truck across the street watching them through the window, and I realized that they looked happy. Genuinely, completely happy. They'd destroyed 2 marriages, broken up a family, lost their jobs. Lisa had been fired on Monday. Brandon was on administrative leave pending an investigation. And they looked happier than I'd seen Lisa look in years. That's when I understood that I hadn't really won anything. Sure, there had been consequences, but they were consequences Lisa and Brandon were willing to accept. They'd gotten what they wanted. Each other. Everything else was just collateral damage they were prepared to live with. But I wasn't prepared to live with it. I called Jennifer Kellerman that night. "How are you holding up?" I asked. "Some days are better than others. The kids are having a hard time understanding why Daddy doesn't live here anymore, but we're managing." "Are you proceeding with the divorce?" "Oh, yes. My lawyer says I should get the house, primary custody, and a substantial portion of his retirement accounts. Adultery matters in this state, especially when there's documentation." "Good. He should pay for what he did." "What about you and Lisa?" "She moved in with him. They seem very happy together." "That bothers you." It wasn't a question. Jennifer could hear it in my voice. "Yeah, it bothers me. They get to be happy while we get to rebuild our lives from scratch. They get the fairy tale romance while we get the legal bills and the empty houses." "So, what are you going to do about it?" "I don't know. What can I do?" "You could make sure their happiness doesn't last." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Brandon owes me 8 years of marriage, 2 children's security, and a comfortable life. He owes you 12 years of marriage and a future you'd planned together. Maybe it's time he paid up." "I'm listening." "Brandon's been looking for a new job since the investigation started at his current company. He's got interviews lined up, references to call. What do you think would happen if potential employers knew about his affair? About how he destroyed 2 families for his office romance?" "They probably wouldn't hire him." "Probably not. And what do you think would happen if Lisa couldn't find work either? If every job application led to questions about why she left her last position? They'd have a hard time making ends meet. Very hard. And what happens to fairy tale romances when there's no money coming in? When the stress of unemployment and mounting bills starts to take its toll? They fall apart. Exactly. Love is wonderful, but it doesn't pay the rent." I thought about what she was suggesting. It was vindictive, calculated, and probably effective. It was also more ruthless than anything I'd ever considered doing. "How would we do it?" "Leave that to me. I have friends in HR departments all over the city. I have social media accounts and online review platforms. I have a very compelling story about a man who destroyed my family and a woman who helped him do it." "You want to destroy their careers permanently." "I want them to face the real consequences of their choices. Right now, they think love conquers all. Let's see how they feel about that when they're both unemployed and struggling to pay for their little love nest." I should have said no. I should have told Jennifer that I wasn't interested in a long-term campaign of revenge. I should have said that I just wanted to move on with my life. Instead, I said, "What do you need from me?" Over the next month, Jennifer Kellerman proved to be a very effective partner in revenge. She had contacts throughout the city's business community, and she used every one of them. When Brandon applied for jobs, she made sure the hiring managers knew about his affair and the way it had destroyed 2 families. When Lisa sent out resumes, Jennifer ensured that potential employers heard about her unprofessional conduct and the drama she'd brought to her previous workplace. I provided documentation, the photos, the hotel receipts, the evidence of their months-long deception. Jennifer provided the network and the narrative. Together, we made sure that Brandon and Lisa's love story became a cautionary tale about the consequences of infidelity. The results were swift and devastating. Brandon was turned down for 3 positions he'd been considered for, each time after what seemed like promising initial interviews. Lisa couldn't even get interviews. Her applications disappeared into black holes, never to be acknowledged. Within 6 weeks of moving in together, both of them were unemployed and struggling to pay their bills. Brandon's savings were being drained by child support and legal fees from his divorce. Lisa had never been good with money, and without her steady income, she was quickly falling behind on her credit card payments. I knew all this because Jennifer had ways of finding things out. She had friends who knew people. She had sources of information I'd never thought to cultivate, and she shared everything with me, feeding my need to know that Lisa and Brandon were suffering consequences for their actions. Brandon's been working at a car dealership, Jennifer told me during one of our weekly phone calls. Sales, making maybe a third of what he used to make. What about Lisa? Temp work, filing, data entry, whatever she can get. Nothing permanent, nothing with benefits. How are they doing? Not well. My friend who lives in their apartment complex says there's been a lot of yelling coming from their unit, fights about money mostly. I should have felt satisfied. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? For there to be real consequences, for their fairy tale romance to be tested by reality. But instead of satisfaction, I felt hollow, empty. Maybe we should back off, I said. They're both unemployed, they're struggling financially. Maybe that's enough. Enough? Jennifer's voice was sharp. Jake, my children ask me every day when Daddy's coming home. My 8-year-old thinks it's her fault that her parents got divorced. Brandon destroyed my family for his midlife crisis, and you think he's suffered enough because he's working at a car dealership? I just think maybe we've made our point. Our point? What point is that? That actions have consequences. That you can't just blow up people's lives without paying a price? Yes. Then we're not done, because right now they're still together. They're still playing house in their little apartment, telling themselves that their love is worth all the pain they've caused. They haven't really paid yet. What more do you want to do? I want their relationship to end the same way it began, with lies and betrayal and heartbreak. I want them to hurt each other the way they hurt us. How? Leave that to me. I have some ideas. Jennifer's idea was simple and brutal. Make Brandon and Lisa doubt each other. If their relationship was built on lies and deception, she reasoned, it wouldn't take much to make them wonder what else their partner might be hiding. She started with Lisa. Using a fake social media account, she began liking and commenting on Lisa's posts, gradually building what appeared to be a friendship with my ex-wife. The fake profile belonged to Amanda, a recently divorced woman who claimed to understand what Lisa was going through. Amanda was sympathetic to Lisa's situation, supportive of her relationship with Brandon, and gradually became someone Lisa confided in. Through their online conversations, Jennifer learned about the stress cracks that were already forming in Lisa and Brandon's relationship. Money was tight, tighter than either of them had expected. Brandon was bitter about the child support payments and legal fees that were draining his savings. Lisa was frustrated by her inability to find steady work and was beginning to resent Brandon for the career she'd lost because of their affair. They were fighting more, loving less, and beginning to question whether their relationship was worth everything they'd sacrificed for it. That's when Amanda began planting seeds of doubt. I hate to say this, she wrote to Lisa, but are you sure Brandon is being completely honest with you about his finances? My ex hid money from me during our divorce, and I didn't find out until it was too late. What do you mean? Lisa responded. I mean, if he's claiming he can't help more with expenses because of child support and legal bills, you might want to verify that. Men lie about money all the time, especially when they're trying to avoid responsibility. At the same time, Jennifer was working on Brandon through a different approach. She had a male friend, someone Brandon had never met, start showing up at the car dealership where Brandon worked. This friend, Mike, posed as a potential customer, struck up conversations with Brandon, and gradually built what appeared to be a casual friendship. Through Mike, Jennifer learned that Brandon was already having doubts about his relationship with Lisa. The financial pressure was getting to him, and he was beginning to wonder if leaving his wife and children had been worth it. He missed his old life, his comfortable house, his financial security. Mike began reinforcing these doubts, asking innocent questions about Brandon's situation and making observations that highlighted everything Brandon had given up. Must be tough, starting over at our age, Mike said during one of their conversations. New apartment, new job, having to rebuild everything from scratch. Yeah, it's been harder than I expected, Brandon admitted. Still, I guess when you find the right person, it's worth it, right? I thought so, but lately... Brandon trailed off. Lately what? I don't know. It's just different when you're living together full-time, dealing with real-world problems instead of just meeting for romantic dinners and hotel rooms. Reality has a way of killing romance, Mike agreed. Plus, there's always the question of whether someone who cheated with you might cheat on you. It was a poisonous seed, but it took root quickly. If Lisa had been willing to lie to her husband and sneak around behind his back, What was to stop her from doing the same thing to Brandon? Meanwhile, Amanda was working on Lisa from the other direction. I don't want to alarm you, she wrote, but I heard something troubling. A friend of mine saw Brandon having lunch with a woman last week. Just the two of them. Very cozy looking. That's impossible, Lisa replied. Brandon doesn't know any women here except me. I'm probably wrong. It was probably just a business lunch or something, but you know how men are when they're under stress. Sometimes they start looking for comfort wherever they can find it. The doubt, once planted, began to grow. Lisa started paying closer attention to Brandon's schedule, his phone calls, his moods. Brandon started questioning Lisa's commitment, wondering if she was already looking for her next relationship. They began checking up on each other, going through each other's phones, questioning each other's explanations for where they'd been and who they'd been with. The trust that had never been solid to begin with started to crumble completely. Jennifer kept me updated on their deteriorating relationship through our weekly phone calls. They're barely speaking to each other, she reported. My source at the apartment complex says the fights are getting worse. Last week, someone called the police because of a noise complaint. What are they fighting about? Everything. Money, trust, the future. Brandon thinks Lisa is looking for someone with more money. Lisa thinks Brandon is already planning his exit strategy. Are either of those things true? Does it matter? They believe they're true, and that's what counts. The end came sooner than I expected. Lisa showed up at my house on a Thursday evening in March, 6 months after she'd moved out. She looked terrible, thin, pale, exhausted. The confident woman who'd left me for her lover was gone, replaced by someone who looked beaten down by life. Can I come in? She asked. I let her into the kitchen, the same room where we'd had our last conversation as a married couple. It's over, she said without preamble. Brandon and I, it's over. What happened? Everything. Nothing. I don't know. She sat down heavily at the table. We couldn't trust each other. Every conversation turned into an argument. Every problem became someone's fault. I'm sorry. She looked up at me sharply. Are you? Are you really sorry, or is this what you wanted? I thought about that question. Was this what I'd wanted? To see Lisa broken and defeated, her fairy tale romance destroyed by reality and doubt? I wanted you to face consequences for what you did, I said finally. I wanted there to be a price for the lies and the cheating and the way you used people. Well, congratulations. I've lost everything. My marriage, my job, my relationship with Brandon, my financial security. I'm 32 years old and I have nothing. You made choices, Lisa. This is what happens when you make bad choices. I know that, she snapped. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you and I hurt Brandon's family and I destroyed everything good in my life. But did you have to make it so much worse? What do you mean? I know it was you. You and Jennifer Kellerman, the job applications that went nowhere, the rumors that followed us everywhere, the way every door seemed to close just when we thought we might catch a break. I didn't deny it. There was no point. You wanted us to fail, she continued. You wanted our relationship to fall apart, and you made sure it happened. Your relationship fell apart because it was built on lies and betrayal. I just made sure you couldn't run away from the consequences. So what now? Are you happy? Do you feel vindicated? I looked at my ex-wife. This woman I'd once loved more than anything in the world, and I realized that I didn't feel vindicated at all. I felt empty, hollow, like I'd won a game that wasn't worth playing. I don't feel anything, I said honestly. Well, that makes two of us. She stood up to leave, then turned back to me. For what it's worth, I am sorry. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I lied to you. I'm sorry I destroyed our marriage. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it. Where will you go? I don't know. My mother said I could stay with her for a while, until I figure things out. After she left, I called Jennifer to tell her it was over. Lisa came by tonight. She and Brandon broke up. Good, Jennifer said. How do you feel? Empty. That's normal. Revenge doesn't make you feel better. It just makes you feel like you've balanced the scales. Is that enough? It has to be. It's all we get. But it wasn't enough. Over the next few weeks, as the reality of what I'd done settled in, I realized that I'd become someone I didn't recognize. I'd become vindictive, calculating, cruel. I'd destroyed lives not because I had to, but because I could. Lisa had hurt me, yes. She'd lied to me and cheated on me and broken our marriage vows. But what I'd done in response was worse. I'd systematically destroyed her life, not for justice, but for revenge. And the worst part was that it hadn't made me feel any better. If anything, it had made me feel worse. I'd won, but the victory was hollow. I'd gotten my revenge, but it had cost me my soul. 3 months later, I ran into Brandon at a grocery store. He looked as bad as Lisa had. Thin, tired, defeated. He was buying generic brands and counting coupons, a far cry from the confident man who'd stolen my wife. He saw me and nodded, a brief acknowledgement of our shared history. Jake. Brandon. We stood there for a moment, two men whose lives had been destroyed by the same woman and the choices we'd all made. I heard you and Lisa broke up, I said. Yeah, turns out love doesn't conquer all. I'm sorry it didn't work out. He looked at me sharply, searching for sarcasm or malice, but finding neither. Are you? Really? Yeah, I am. I wanted you both to face consequences for what you did, but I didn't want you to be miserable forever. Well, mission accomplished on the consequences part. What are you doing now? Still selling cars, still paying child support and legal bills, still trying to figure out how I screwed up my life so completely. Any regrets? Every day. I had a good life, Jake. A wife who loved me, kids who looked up to me, a career I was proud of. And I threw it all away. For what? For a few months of excitement? For the thrill of sneaking around? For love, I said. You said you loved her. I thought I did. But looking back, I think I was just bored. Bored with my marriage, bored with my routine, bored with being a responsible adult. Lisa was exciting, forbidden, different. But that's not love. That's just selfishness. What about now? Do you still love her? I don't know what love is anymore. I know I hurt everyone I was supposed to protect. I know I destroyed my family for something that wasn't real. I know I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for what I did to my kids. We parted ways in the parking lot, two casualties of a war that nobody had won. Brandon drove away in a 10-year-old Honda, a far cry from the BMW he'd been driving when this all started. That night, I sat in my empty house and thought about the past year. I'd gotten everything I'd wanted. Lisa and Brandon had faced consequences for their affair, their relationship had fallen apart, and everyone knew the truth about what had happened to my marriage. But I'd paid a price, too. I'd become someone I didn't like, someone who was capable of cruelty and calculation and systematic revenge. I'd won the war, but I'd lost myself in the process. The next morning, I called Margaret Patterson, Lisa's mother. How is she? I asked. Struggling. She's living in my spare bedroom, working part-time at a retail job, trying to put her life back together. It's going to take a long time. I'm sorry. Are you? Or are you just saying that? I'm sorry it came to this. I'm sorry she made the choices she did, and I'm sorry I made the choices I did in response. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. She asked me to tell you something, she said finally. What? She said to tell you that she understands now. She understands what it feels like to have your life destroyed by someone you trusted. She said she deserved everything that happened to her, but she wanted you to know that she finally understands how much she hurt you. Tell her... I paused, trying to figure out what I wanted to say. Tell her that I hope she finds a way to be happy again. Tell her that I hope we both do. A year later, I sold the house and moved to a different city. I needed a fresh start, a place where nobody knew my story or my history. I opened a new auto repair shop and slowly began building a new life. I heard through mutual friends that Lisa had eventually found steady work and was doing better. She was still living with her mother, still rebuilding her life piece by piece, but she was surviving. Brandon had moved back in with his ex-wife, though they weren't reconciling romantically. They were trying to co-parent their children and repair some of the damage his affair had caused. It was messy and complicated, but they were trying. As for me, I was learning to live with what I'd done. I'd gotten my revenge, balanced the scales, made sure there were consequences for the lies and betrayal that had destroyed my marriage. But I'd also learned that revenge is a hollow victory, that destroying someone else's life doesn't repair your own. The pancakes Margaret had made that night, when this all began, had gone cold and uneaten on the table. Just like the marriage they'd been meant to sweeten, they'd been ruined by the bitter truth of what Lisa had done. But unlike those pancakes, some things can't be thrown away and forgotten. Some things you have to live with forever, even when they leave a bad taste in your mouth, especially then.